The day had finally arrived, the culmination of 6 months of grueling work, sleepless nights, and countless coffee-fueled strategy sessions. As I stood in the elevator heading up to the executive floor, I clutched my portfolio against my chest, trying to calm my racing heart. This presentation wasn't just important, it was career-defining. Our company was looking to pivot into a new market segment, and my proposal would either cement my place among the leadership or leave me forever labeled as not executive material. I spotted Mark as soon as the elevator doors opened. He was standing there with that smile. You know the one. The kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. The kind that makes you instinctively check if your wallet is still in your pocket. "Cutting it close, aren't we?" he said, checking his watch performatively. "Meeting starts in 15 minutes. "Perfect timing then," I replied, moving past him toward the preparation room. Mark had been my colleague for 3 years, though colleague implies a certain collegiality that was never present between us. We both started at the company around the same time, both ambitious, both gunning for the same promotion. But somewhere along the way, Mark decided competition wasn't enough. Sabotage was more his style. I set up my laptop in the conference room and connected it to the projector. Everything looked fine. I decided to grab a quick coffee to settle my nerves, leaving my computer briefly unattended. That was my first mistake. When I returned 5 minutes later, Mark was leaning over my laptop. "Just helping you set up," he said, straightening up quickly. Wanted to make sure the resolution was correct. I should have known better. I should have checked immediately. But the CEO and board members were already filing in, and I was too focused on greeting them professionally. It wasn't until I was called to present that I realized what had happened. My files were gone. All of them. The presentation I had meticulously prepared, the spreadsheets, the market analysis, vanished. "Seems like there's a problem," Mark announced to the room, barely containing his satisfaction. "Perhaps we should move on to my presentation while they sort this out?" The CEO frowned. Board members exchanged glances. I could feel my career evaporating in real time. But then I did something that made Mark's smug smile freeze on his face. I smiled back. "No problem at all," I said calmly, reaching into my bag for my tablet. I always come prepared. Before I continue, a quick heads up for those following, along with my workplace stories. YouTube's been unsubscribing people lately, so make sure you're still subscribed and leave a like if you're enjoying this corporate drama. It really helps the channel. Now, back to the moment that changed everything. The look on Mark's face shifted from triumph to confusion as I connected my tablet to the projector. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I had overheard him in the break room last Friday, whispering to another coworker about making sure my big moment would be a complete disaster. And that wasn't even the most damning thing I discovered about Mark's activities. As I pulled up my presentation back up, I couldn't help but wonder how he would react when he realized exactly what else I had prepared to share today. As I connected my tablet to the projector, the boardroom fell into an expectant hush. Mark's expression was priceless, a mixture of shock and dawning horror as my presentation logo appeared on the screen. The CEO, Ms. Richardson, raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by the sudden tension in the room. "Always have contingencies," I said, making deliberate eye contact with Mark. That's actually one of the key principles in my market expansion strategy. I launched into my presentation with a confidence I'd rehearsed for weeks. The slides were flawless, perhaps even better than the originals. You see, after overhearing Mark's break room plotting, I'd spent the entire weekend refining everything, making the backup version exceptional. "As you can see," I continued, gesturing to the projected market analysis, "our current strategy leaves us vulnerable in 3 critical areas. My proposal addresses each one while opening up the untapped Midwest demographic." I could feel Mark shifting uncomfortably in his seat. This wasn't just a backup, it was an improved version of what he thought he'd destroyed. His sabotage had inadvertently pushed me to perfect my work. Ms. Richardson leaned forward, clearly engaged. These conversion projections are ambitious. What makes you confident they're achievable? This was the question I'd prepared for most carefully. I'm glad you asked, I replied, switching to the next slide. I've actually been running a small-scale pilot program in our Cincinnati office for the past 2 months. Murmurs spread across the table. This wasn't common knowledge. I'd kept it quiet, working directly with the regional manager who owed me a favor. Mark's face drained of color as he realized I'd been building evidence while he'd been plotting sabotage. The results speak for themselves, I continued, revealing the pilot data. A 23% increase in customer acquisition with only minimal resource allocation. The board members exchanged impressed glances. I could practically see my stock rising in real time, while Mark looked increasingly ill. Before I could advance to the next slide, my tablet momentarily glitched. For a split second, a folder labeled Mark Evidence flashed on screen before disappearing as my presentation resumed. It was a millisecond, hardly noticeable to most, but Mark saw it. I made sure of that by glancing directly at him as it happened. His entire body tensed, and I could almost hear his internal panic. What evidence? How much did I know? I continued smoothly. Our competitive advantage lies in our agility and understanding of customer behavior, something that, unfortunately, our competitors lack. Before I continue with this story, I wanted to quickly mention that YouTube has recently been unsubscribing viewers without their knowledge. If you're enjoying this workplace revenge series, please take a second to check if you're still subscribed and drop a like. It really helps the channel grow. Now, back to that boardroom where things were about to get even more interesting. As I wrapped up the presentation, the boardroom erupted in applause. Ms. Richardson was nodding appreciatively. "This is exactly the kind of forward thinking we need," she said. "I'd like you to lead the implementation team." Mark abruptly stood up. "I think my presentation offers an alternative approach we should consider before making decisions," he interjected, voice strained. The CEO checked her watch. "We'll take a 15-minute break, then hear your proposal, Mark." As the room emptied, Mark cornered me by the water cooler. "What was that folder?" he hissed, his composure completely shattered. "What do you think you know?" I took a slow sip of water, letting him stew in his anxiety. "It's not what I think I know, Mark," I replied calmly. "It's what I can prove." What Mark didn't realize was that my discovery went far beyond his petty sabotage. While backing up my files, I'd stumbled upon something that could change everything. Not just for him, but for the entire company. 15 minutes isn't long when you're trying to decide how much to reveal to someone who tried to destroy your career. I watched Mark's hands trembling slightly as he clutched his presentation folder, his knuckles whitening with each passing second. "I've always wondered," I said, keeping my voice low, "why the Cincinnati numbers never seem to match the official reports. At first, I thought it was just accounting errors." Mark's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. "You're bluffing. You don't have anything." I scrolled casually through my tablet, not actually looking for anything specific, just enjoying the way his eyes tracked my every move with mounting panic. The interesting thing about network permissions is how rarely they get audited. When I was recovering my files, I noticed someone had accessed folders they shouldn't have, left digital fingerprints everywhere. Mark's face flickered between anger and fear. "Whatever you think you found, doctored quarterly reports, inflated numbers. Funny how they always benefited your department," I interrupted. "I'm especially curious about those overseas consultant payments that never quite seem to match any actual consulting work." The boardroom door opened as executives began filtering back in. Mark leaned closer, his cologne overpowering as he whispered, "This isn't over. You have no idea who you're messing with." I smiled pleasantly. "Oh, I think I do. That's exactly the problem." As we retook our seats, I noticed Ms. Richardson studying us both with a calculated gaze. Mark cleared his throat and began setting up his presentation with fumbling fingers. "Before we proceed," Ms. Richardson said unexpectedly, "I'd like to announce that, effective immediately, we're implementing a new security protocol for all financial reporting systems." Her eyes swept the room before landing pointedly on Mark. "Recent internal audits have raised some concerns." I kept my expression neutral, but inside, my heart was racing. Internal audits? This wasn't my doing. Someone else had noticed discrepancies too. Mark's presentation was a disaster. He stumbled through slides that looked hastily assembled, contradicting points I'd already proven with my pilot program. When questioned about implementation costs, he couldn't provide concrete figures. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. As the meeting concluded, Ms. Richardson asked me and two other executives to stay behind. Mark shot me a venomous glare as he was excluded from the impromptu gathering. If you've been following along with this workplace saga, I'd really appreciate if you'd check that you're still subscribed to the channel and leave a like on this video. YouTube has been removing subscriptions lately, and your support helps me continue sharing these corporate survival stories. Now, let's get back to what happened next in that boardroom. "I'm forming a special task force," Ms. Richardson said, once the door closed. "There are financial irregularities we need to investigate discreetly. The board is concerned." She slid folders across the table to each of us. I opened mine and froze. Inside were printouts of exactly the same discrepancies I'd discovered. "Why us?" asked Diane from legal. Ms. Richardson's eyes met mine. "Because you three aren't connected to the departments under scrutiny, and because I need people who notice details others miss." Nah, as we left the meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Parking garage. Level B. Now." I hesitated, wondering if Mark was trying to lure me somewhere isolated. But what awaited me in that dimly lit garage would reveal a conspiracy far deeper than I'd imagined. One that would make Mark's presentation sabotage seem like child's play in comparison. My heart pounded as I descended to parking level B, each footstep echoing through the concrete structure. I gripped my phone tightly, a finger hovering over the emergency dial. The garage was eerily quiet, except for the distant hum of ventilation systems and occasional water drips from pipes overhead. I rounded a concrete pillar and froze. A figure stood in the shadows beside a luxury sedan I recognized as belonging to our CFO, David Mercer. "You shouldn't have come alone," said a voice, female, not Mark's. Janine, our head of compliance, stepped into the dim light. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, her eyes darting nervously around the garage. "What's this about?" I asked, maintaining distance. "Did you send that text?" She nodded. "I saw you in the meeting. You know something's wrong with the financials. I've been tracking the same irregularities for months. Why approach me like this? Why not through official channels?" Janine laughed bitterly. "Because I don't know who to trust anymore. Mark's just a pawn. He's cooking books, yes, but he's doing it for someone higher up." She glanced around nervously before continuing. 2 weeks ago, I brought my concerns to David. The next day, my office was broken into. Nothing taken, just searched. A warning. The pieces started clicking together. The CFO, the overseas payments, Mark's unusual confidence. "It's not just accounting fraud, is it?" I asked quietly. "Dig deeper into those consultant payments," she whispered. "They're going to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. I traced 3 of them back to a holding corporation with ties to..." The screech of tires cut her off. Headlights swept across us as a car sped around the corner. Without another word, Janine pressed a flash drive into my palm and melted back into the shadows. Before I continue sharing what was on that drive, I should mention that YouTube has been automatically unsubscribing viewers lately. If you're enjoying this corporate conspiracy story, please take a second to check that you're still subscribed and leave a like. It really helps the channel. Now back to that fateful moment in the garage. The next morning, Mark wasn't at work. His office sat empty, computer gone, desk cleared. The official story was that he'd taken an emergency leave of absence. I locked myself in a conference room and plugged in Janine's flash drive. What I found made my blood run cold. Not just evidence of financial fraud, but emails discussing neutralizing problems and maintaining operational security. One name appeared repeatedly as the recipient of these cryptic messages: Richardson. Not Mark, not David Mercer, but our CEO herself. My hands shook as I processed this. I'd been invited onto a task force by the very person potentially orchestrating the fraud. Was it a trap? A way to identify threats? Or was she genuinely unaware? As I contemplated my next move, my office phone rang. The caller ID showed Ms. Richardson's extension. "Meeting in 5 minutes," her assistant said briskly. "Bring everything you found." I stared at Janine's flash drive. Whatever I decided in the next 5 minutes would either expose a corporate conspiracy or potentially make me its next target. What I couldn't possibly know then was that someone else was watching this chess game unfold. Someone who had been collecting their own evidence, waiting for precisely this moment to make their move. And their revelation would turn everything I thought I knew about our company completely upside down. I made the most crucial decision of my career in those 5 minutes. I copied the flash drive's contents to a secure cloud account as insurance, then headed to Richardson's office, prepared for anything. When I entered her corner office, the tension was palpable. Richardson sat behind her expansive desk, but she wasn't alone. To my shock, Janine was there too, looking considerably more composed than she had in the garage. And beside her stood a man in a dark suit I'd never seen before. "Please sit down," Richardson said, her voice unusually gentle. "This is Special Agent Dawson from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." My legs nearly gave out as I sank into the chair. "You're not in trouble," Dawson clarified. "In fact, you've unwittingly become a critical part of an operation 2 years in the making." Richardson leaned forward. 6 months ago, Janine discovered discrepancies in our financial reporting. Rather than bringing it only to me, she correctly followed protocol and contacted both internal audit and external authorities. What you've been experiencing is the culmination of a carefully orchestrated sting operation. "I don't understand," I stammered. "The emails on the flash drive implicated you directly." "Those emails were carefully crafted," Janine explained. "We needed to create a paper trail that would convince Mark and David they were protected from the highest level. It was the only way to get them to act boldly enough to gather conclusive evidence." Agent Dawson opened his laptop. "Mark didn't take a leave of absence. He was arrested yesterday evening, along with David Mercer and 3 external collaborators. They've been siphoning company funds through those shell companies for nearly 3 years. But why involve me at all?" I asked, still struggling to process everything. Richardson smiled for the first time. "Because when Mark deleted your presentation, he made a critical mistake. He revealed his desperation, which told us we were getting close. We needed someone with your analytical skills who was already suspicious but not involved. You became our perfect inside observer." "The meeting in the garage," I began, "was carefully monitored," Janine finished. "We couldn't risk telling you everything, but we needed you to have enough information to continue digging naturally." The realization of how thoroughly I'd been maneuvered hit me. So what happens now? Now, Agent Dawson said, closing his laptop, we prepare for trial. And thanks in part to your unbiased observations and documentation, we have an exceptionally strong case. Richardson stood up. And as for your position here, I believe we'll be needing a new director of financial oversight, someone with demonstrated integrity and analytical precision. The board approved the creation of the position this morning, reporting directly to me. 6 months later, our company's stock had recovered from the temporary hit when the scandal broke. The trial was swift, with overwhelming evidence leading to guilty pleas from all parties. My new role gave me unprecedented visibility into our operations and the authority to implement robust anti-fraud measures. Sometimes I think about that pivotal moment when I chose to walk into Richardson's office, not knowing if I was heading into a trap. It taught me that while preparation is essential, sometimes the boldest move is the right one. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that integrity isn't just a corporate buzzword. It's the foundation of everything meaningful we build in our careers and lives. Thank you for following my journey through this corporate conspiracy. If you enjoyed this story of corporate intrigue and redemption, please hit that subscribe button to join our community. I share new workplace drama stories every week, drawing from both real experiences and fictional scenarios that keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support means everything to this channel. Until next time, remember, always keep a backup of your presentations. You never know when they might save more than just your meeting.